So as I listened to the comments, I think that's why you come to the meeting, is you can always hear a talk now anywhere over the webinar or on your iPod or wherever you may roam, but it's really the interactions among us and the engagement that really makes a difference. And I think that's what we know. We've been talking about the time it takes and the people time and breaking bread together. That really makes a difference in how you trust and how you move forward and really what are making differences in people's lives. So I want to first thank the president and those participating, and just to be invited to this. This is my first time here, and I've only been in this role at NHBLI for about 3 months, but implementation has been a part of my life and part of my career. I don't know if they've always called it that, but that's what they're calling it now. So it's been a pleasure to take on this role. So I wanted to take this opportunity to share a little bit about what's going on at NHBLI, but in hearing the comments, I also made sure to try to think about answering some of the questions you had and try to think about some of the opportunities. Some of them are time sensitive, so I'll make sure to tell you to get your pens ready, and I'm hoping we can make things available to you as soon as possible. So I wanted to start with that, and thank you for allowing me this time today. So in terms of where we fit, I did hear a lot about all these agencies and how we aren't all sitting together breaking bread and figuring this all out. And so I wanted to make sure you understand where I am. So in terms of HHS, there are a lot of agencies, and we do all have a part in this, and we do try to work together. And we at NHBLI work a lot with other agencies, and I'm pleased that even some of our staff continually works with the other agencies and partner specifically with ARC. We've had experience with Indian Health Services, and personally I've worked with all of these agencies and tend to have some of those partnerships, but as you know, partnerships take time, and it's never always easy, but it's something we are continuing to strive for. And in terms of NIH, we have an institute for every disease part of your body, and if only our body was cut up in 27 pieces, it would make it easy, but it isn't, and we're all interconnected. So that's always the struggle, right? Communities, people, we're all interconnected, and we have to work together. And our mission is really research, training, education for heart, lung, and blood, and we even do sleep as well. So really, NHBLI has a pretty broad mission. It's the third largest institute at NIH, so our mission's pretty broad. And we've just gone through a strategic visioning process, and I was really excited that, number 3 is translational research. It's really a very important part of what we do, and you can understand, given what our mission is, why. And as part of that, about 2 years ago, they created a center, and that's where I sit. And it is a center just for translation research. So as part of that, and I just had a tradition of saying translation research is important. But when you get to the end of the translation research part, it's harder. It's the more complex part because it's the human part, it's the community part, it's everything that we've been dealing with today. So this was to highlight a focus through a center on implementation science that address domestic and global health inequities and research training to really get at translational research. So it's a pretty new center in NHBLI's really length of its history. And as part of that, we have a translation research branch, implementation science, where I'm the chief, and LaShondra Price, you can stand up. She's the branch chief for translation research branch, so everybody should direct every question they have to her. She also, I'm sorry, she's health inequities and global branch, I'm sorry, but you can still ask her all the questions. And then translation research branch is Uche Sampson, who's not here today, and I'm implementation science branch, and then our director is George Mensa. So we do have a branch that's trying to really address a lot of the issues here today. And in terms of the models, there's a lot of models. I think one of our latest speakers at a workshop, I think there was something like 64 models that they found for implementation, I think. And, well, it's been a couple days, so it's probably 72. By the time I finish my talk, it might be 73. So no more models while you're here. But this focus on late-stage translation research, because that's the real world, and that's where I live. I may have, yes, you may have, emoji or two that in your life, but and that's the real work, and that's the hard work. And in terms of what we're struggling with, that's where our work lives. And that's what we need your help with in terms of your research grants. And I think that's what we've been talking about today. And how do you measure it? And what does it mean? And does it mean the same thing to the community? And we didn't have all the answers. I kept waiting as you spoke. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get the answer, so my job is going to be easy on Monday. But that's okay. We're going to keep working at it, right? And in terms of that, this late stage, it's the clinic. Okay, we're all excited when we get to clinic, but then, oh, it doesn't work in the community. Oh, now we have to take this population. It's all of that. So these are really key. We want to make that population impact. That's really what we want. It's multi-layered, it's multifaceted, it's everything. And we have to engaging stakeholders at each level. I was recently at a meeting, a kickoff for an implementation meeting and going to implement, and they were like, well, that's phase 2. And I was like, well, what do you mean that's phase 2? It's like, doesn't it start at the beginning? And, you know, we were trying to bring everybody together, and people were using the same words, but they're meaning different things. And we have to remember that bringing in the communities and stakeholders is not phase 2. It's not in the beginning and the end. And it's always reminding ourselves of that. And it happens all the time. So I don't think it's something that you don't have to keep repeating. Things that are important you have to repeat, just like you do when you write your grant. If it's important, you have to say it many times in many different ways so people are sure to hear it in whichever way they need to receive it. And I think that's really important. I know we were talking about different ways of language and receiving information. But now this is what I think why Consuelo really wanted me to talk, was about money, because people are talking about money. That's where some of the power is. I do not have money. My colleague brought the checkbook. Oh, you didn't bring the checkbook either. I believe it's in the Department of Treasury, which is down the street. You may try to go down there and get it. Those of you who've never been to D.C., right down the street is also the Mint. But, however, there's one time-sensitive new program that I do want you to think about immediately, and that is the K-12. Now, we've always had Ks, and Ks for career, and yes, I do know career is spelled with a C, but at NIH we do, you know what we want to do. And K-12s are kind of like fellowships, but they're for early careers. So it's better than postdocs because they pay better, which I think is important to think about economics and training. I don't think that people should have to not make a living wage to be able to be engaged in research. I don't think that makes any sense. We know the data on inequities that if we want people to engage in research and do a meaningful job, they need to make a meaningful wage, and we mean that for researchers and community collaborators. But we are trying to build a new transdisciplinary implementation workforce, and this is an RFA, which means request for application, which means it's special money. It's put aside. Those of you who do research, you know what that means. Those are good things. The problem is this is due soon. So what I'm asking you all to do is to go right back and think about this immediately, because this is the first time we're doing it. We want it to be successful because, you know, sometimes people may think if something's not successful the first time, maybe people aren't interested. You know, we don't want people to think that they're not interested in giving money to implementation science research training. We wouldn't want that, right? Right? Okay, I'm just making sure. So RFAs are really very special, and this is the kind of group that would benefit from this. And it's due in October. But also with K-12, you don't often see that this has a special part that you get a year to plan. And we all know that planning is essential, because if you're going to build a multidisciplinary team, you need time. And usually when we do training events, we just say you need to have everybody together. But the person who, Helena Michaud, who's really been a long-time leader, she's one of the highest-ranking public health service officers in government. She really realized that if we're going to do this, we're going to have these interdisciplinary kind of partnerships that go across disciplines, and what we're really trying to do is translational. People need to plan. So this is a very rare opportunity. So it's not often that you have grants where, you know, yes, is it worth staying up the extra night and getting your people together and getting these teams that you have together to do this? I do think this is that opportunity to get the training in. So, and I'm available, and Sandra Price is available, and even though she's not here, Helena Michaud is available. We really would like to see implementation scientists think about this and partner to get these submissions in. It's going to be a special review. So a lot of the comments I heard about in some of the small groups about, when the review comes in and you have the community partners, the reviewers aren't sensitive, those kind of issues won't be in the same ways you hear in some of the regular review groups that don't know what you do and think about community partners and implementation. So, write that down, that the K-12, and that it's due in October. You don't have to do the letter of intent. You don't. But I do suggest that you contact us right away. Okay. The other thing is you have more time. It's there are more receipt dates, so you don't have to do it right away. You can do it in October and June. We have a special review group, and I think that is important when you have new areas and you don't have enough maybe people in the field who can think about what you do and how to address some of the issues we've been thinking about today and that we have been thinking about throughout this meeting, is to look at the delivery of guideline-based care. And some of the examples of the research presented today were guideline-based care. People didn't specifically say which guideline. We have a lot of guidelines we put out. But you need to test that they work and fidelity and all the things you want to do. So there really isn't a special any other announcement. So this is, again, another, when you have a PAR, the R means that there's a special, there's more dates, but there's a special review. So again, this is another announcement that is tailored for the kind of science and research training and things that you want to do in building your team. So you could use this announcement when you are testing guidelines of practice in the community to see if they work. So this is another great one. So 2 down. Some more to go. And then getting people together is always something. People are, getting money from this one and that one, but you want to have it sustained, like over a couple of years, like 3 to 5 years. And there is an NIH-wide announcement for our 13s. It varies by different institutes, but you can get sustained funding for meetings. There's only one institute that doesn't participate in IMH, but all the other institutes, all those, so it's 26 of them, will give you funding to support your meetings, and then you can actually plan over years and build those multidisciplinary teams and aims over years. So it's not that every year you're trying to figure out how we're going to fund the next one. You can make some long-term plans to build up those trusts and trust bonds and research plans and communities that you need to be successful with dissemination and implementation in your communities. And then we also have program projects, and not all institutes have that. When you have program projects, what that means is that you have, instead of putting in 3 different things, you have interconnected projects. So as you think about what you're going to do in research and partnering, you can think about, do I use a program project to have pieces that are really translational? And that may be another type of mechanism. And that's, again, something you can put in any time. So not all of our mechanisms are going to say, implementation science here, community engagement here. That doesn't always happen. So what I encourage you to do is to really talk to us and there are implementation science focused program officers now across NIH. And if it's not us, we will help you find the other people who are the right ones for their problem or disease you're trying to study, or we'll even try to find the other institute, or if it's PCORI, or if it's, we'll try to find another agency. I have a colleague now at William T. Grant. I mean, there are people who are the right fit for what you're trying to do, okay? So that's another way to think about it. It may not say implementation science, but there are program projects where one piece of the program can be focused on maybe some of the basic aspects and the guidelines, and then risk. It can be put all together and engaged in that way. And then I wanted to let you know, in terms of looking at funding, in terms of, this was a paper that looked at kind of a broad sweep of our dissemination and implementation studies. NCI has a very large center, and IMH is right behind there, and NHBLI is, we're getting there. I'm hoping we're going to get even stronger. So they are spread out, and it varies in what we're calling dissemination and implementation, but I wanted you to see that. So then finally, I want you to know there's a new review committee that also can help you, and that there's actually now a set-aside review and also a R01 that's specialized, and it has small grants and startup grants and R01. So finally, again, I want you to think about other agency partners who may not be represented here today. Justice, State, Veterans, they're all thinking about this area as well, and Query, and there's a lot of resources. And make sure you know also we have applications that were actually due to on the 26th. But for research training, I don't know if you didn't hear about this, and if there's special exceptions, you maybe could write them. And it happens every year, so you can maybe next year. And that we have a conference coming up in December here as well that you still have time to register for. And so with that, I want you to make sure you keep in touch. And thank you for your time. And I look forward to engaging with you for the rest of the day. Okay.
So yes, Dr. Nease, Dr. Jenkins, if you want to come on up, and Don, you're next.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and it's great to be with you all and to have a chance to talk to you about some of the work that we're doing in Colorado. Consuelo, when I talked to her on the phone about what she'd like to hear, she said, you know, I keep hearing that folks don't, they're struggling with how to educate people to do the kind of work that we do. And so if you could focus your comments on that. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time first talking about some of the principles that we try to ground our work in, and then I'm going to highlight two programs, and hopefully we'll have some time for interplay and dialogue after both I and Dr. Jenkins give our comments. Yeah, let's see. I'm going to hope this advances. Whoops. Okay, so you know, I stand up here and talk about great stuff that we're doing, but I don't do this all myself, thank goodness. I have a wonderful team of partners that I work with, and I just wanted to start off by describing a few of those folks, because we live engagement both in the planning and the execution and the doing of our work. And so these are some of our key partners. So we sit within the Colorado Clinical and Translational Sciences Institute at the University of Colorado. And I have to say we have an incredibly supportive CTSA PI who gets it, and that makes a huge difference. The PACT. So the PACT is a very special group of folks that form our governing body for the work that we do. And it's 14 folks. They're half academicians, half folks from the community, so folks that head up community-based organizations or do community-based work, and they meet with us. We have a formal meeting twice every other month, and then we have committee meetings, and they really work very hard for us, for which we give them a little bit of compensation, but they do a lot of heavy lifting. We also have practice-based research networks that we work with through SNOCAP. That's a practice-based research network consortium that we have in Colorado. And then finally, we have a partner on the other side of the wall. And, you know, I realize my name's Donald, and talking about walls, that might not be such a good idea, but on the other side of the academic wall, which we realize on the academic side that for community-based organizations, trying to work with university offices of grants and contracts, all of the legal stuff just to get money out the door, over the wall, through the wall, can be very difficult. So the Colorado Foundation for the Public Health and the Environment, they are our partner in not only that, in helping us to move money to community-based organizations, but they also provide a huge amount of technical assistance around the work that we do. So very important to us. So as I was putting these slides together, I thought, you know, I could just spend the whole talk with just this one slide, because for me, this really says it all. Okay, so universities traditionally love to talk about outreach, and we're going to do outreach in the community. We're going to go out and tell them about all the wonderful things that are going on inside our walls, and that's not engagement, because it starts with us having the answer. Engagement comes from a point of humility and realizing that, yeah, we have something to share, but our partners in the community also have expertise. They have something to share as well. And to get to that point, we're working together to find an answer. Takes time. Takes time to build trust. Takes time to build the relationships. And you can't shortcut that. And so this is really foundational for us. Very, very important principle that really underpins a lot of really everything that we do. So this is a slide that we use a lot, thanks to Dr. Jack Westfall. So if you've seen it before, I apologize, but this is kind of an example of what universities typically do. So this is the fire department in Lyman, Colorado, out on the rural high plains. And the way I like to talk about it is they've got tools. So they've got a fire hose, they've got some equipment, and that's important. And it looks like they're there to put out a fire, but they obviously couldn't find it. So they need some help. They need some help from community to find the fire and actually address the real need in the community. So that's a good example of also how we approach this work. This is the mission statement that our PAC Council came up with. We actually just reworked this over the past year, beginning with our annual retreat that we do with our PAC Council. And I highlighted in yellow here some of the really important words here about balancing power and responsibility. You know, we had some discussion about power yesterday, and as I was thinking about that, I was saying, you know, it really is important to balance power, but power to do what? What are we really trying to do here? And I think this addresses some of that in improving the health of people of Colorado and the Rocky Mountain region. But balancing that power and also the responsibility. We all take a share of that, take a share of the responsibility. So this is another slide that we use quite a lot. It's about trajectory change. And this arrow kind of represents the normal sort of trajectory of academic work. You sit in your office, you're reading the literature, you come up with an idea, you plan the project, you write the grant. Oh, I need to do this in the community. So you go out to the community, you collect some data, and you publish it. And that's a pretty boring, dare I say, flatline approach to research in the community. What if we change the trajectory by involving community, at least in the conduct, in the data collection, and the analysis? That moves this a little bit. If we actually bring the community to the table for the grant writing and get them to participate in that. Scary, but very, very rewarding, and moves the trajectory up a little bit more. Planning, and on to idea. So the farther back you move down this chain, the more you're going to change the trajectory, and the more you're going to make what comes out the other end really have relevance. And as we talk about translational work, if you start that process at the very beginning, actually the work of translation becomes so much easier. So these are the basic principles of CBPR from Barbara Israel, which we think are very important. This is one of our community research liaisons who's a incredible dancer and demonstrating what he does in his dance group. But you know, these principles are just kind of words on the page until you really start to live them. And I think this kind of sums up the principles behind that. Nothing for the community without the community. So that's what we base our work on. So I'm going to talk about two of our programs, Colorado Immersion Training and Boot Camp Translation Training. So starting off with Colorado Immersion Training. So the way I like to describe this is the following. I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to think about where you grew up or where you spent most of your time growing up, because a lot of us may have moved around a little bit, but think about that street, think about that place and the community and the things that only someone like you that spent that time in that community would know about it. Things that are important, things about the history, what happened there, and the things that people value. You got that picture in your mind? Okay, so open your eyes. So that sense of what it means to be from a community, that's what we try to get across in our immersion training. Those pieces, and there's no way to do that without going into the community. So our immersion training has that very important piece of the feature. For me, the community that I grew up in, the things that I think about are the fact that it was a community that was founded by people who believed so strongly that slavery needed to be abolished that they left their homes in Massachusetts and moved out to the West to found a community that was based on freedom for all people. They held to those principles so strongly that the town got burned to the ground during or before the Civil War. And that's an important piece of the history of the community that I grew up in that if you're just coming in there to do some research, you might not know. So our Colorado Immersion Training, it's targeted at researchers. So this is a very intensive, everybody that goes through this describes it as an emotional experience. The folks that come out of this, it's amazing. There's always tears as we wrap this program up. But we try to impart core principles of CBPR and community engaged translational research and begin to develop skills that folks can use to engage community partners in research. And it gives them a chance to spend a week in a local Colorado community where they can start to understand what's that community story, what are those things that the people that live in that community understand and know. And this is a picture from our last round that is from our Asian refugee community, which was one of our community partners that folks worked in this spring. The structure is pretty basic. We have an orientation day. This year it was in April, and that brings everybody together, the participants, the faculty, the folks that coordinate the program. We start talking to them about the principles, start talking to them about what they're going to be doing. There's 4 to 5 weeks of directed readings, so they do that on their own, but it's not just on their own because we get them to interact. There's a lot of fascinating discussion that goes on over email about the directed readings, and then they spend that immersion week in the community. And I should mention here that that immersion week is led by their hosts, which are one or more of our community research liaisons that actually take them into the community and help to broker and help to begin building those relationships between those folks and the community members in the community organization. So this is Lorenzo again, but in street clothes, not in his dancing outfit, with our group of trainees, again, from this spring. So they spent that week in the community, then there's a wrap-up, and then there's follow-up discussions that go on over subsequent weeks. And this program has led to many participants going for pilot award training, and where we have a partnership development pilot program. Many of those folks go back to that community for their partnership development work. So we've had 88 participants so far, going back to 2010. These are the communities that we've run this in, so both urban and rural, and it's a very, very popular program. It's always oversold every year. So just some quotes from folks that have participated, and I'm not going to read through those. I'll give you a chance to look at those. I especially love the research is the footnote, community improvement is the headline. So moving on to bootcamp translation training. Bootcamp translation is another sort of method of engagement that we use a lot in Colorado. This picture shows one of our bootcamp translation groups with one of our newest trained up bootcamp translation leaders, Matt Simpson, who's one of our researchers. And this is a group focused on cardiovascular care improvement. But just briefly, bootcamp translation, and if you want to hear more about this, we're doing a learning lab later this morning. It's a process that we use to take evidence-based guidelines or information and translate it into language, messaging, and materials that are meaningful and relevant at the local community level. And it really addresses these two questions of what's the message to our community and how do we effectively share that message. And it's not a one-size-fits-all process. We've had experience now taking the same guidelines, translating them into different communities using bootcamp translation, and the messaging's different, and the materials that those communities value are different. So it's a really cool process. The training that we do for this is 2 to 3 days. It's a workshop type format. We target, in terms of participants, researchers, but we've had public health folks come, community leaders that have been a part of this, that are interested in doing this kind of work with their community. It's really focused on basic principles of how to do this, how to facilitate, and we build in lots of opportunities for folks to practice the skills. It's helpful if you come in with some experience with group facilitation, but we also build in some time to sort of learn the facilitation skills that are specific to this process. We offer it in Colorado twice a year. We've also offered it off-site, so if you have a group of folks at your place that want to do this, we'd be happy to come and offer the training at your local site. So far we've done 4 of these, 3 participants, 6 states. And the vast majority of these folks have gone on to run their own bootcamp translation programs in their own communities. So just briefly, some other trainings that we run. Let's Get Started training, which is targeted at both community and campus. Very focused training on basic CBPR principles. We have a curriculum and a training program for folks that join us as community research liaisons, and that's been formalized now that we've run that, worked with our liaisons for a few years, and we've learned from them the work that they do. They've helped us design a training curriculum. And we also do a Community on Campus Day, which is focused on bringing folks from the community to campus to meet with folks to learn about the research that goes on our campus. And it's a little bit of a stealth program because it also helps to show some of our campus researchers how cool it is to work with community members. So that's, I'll stop there. And this is our Twitter handle, newly created. We look forward to hearing your comments and interacting with folks for the rest of the morning and hopefully down the road.
Thank you, and I definitely want to participate in an immersion training. I think that's really, really exciting. I'm going to share with you a bit about our Community Engaged Scholars program, which is truly a partnership for research that is a partnership between our SA, an academic member, and a community member who institute a small research study. And the research study usually focuses on planning or else talent or feasibility testing. Our scholars are competitively selected based on their proposed research study. And I might add they are selected based on community and academic reviewers, and that weight is equal. We have about a 6-year history of working with community engaged scholars, and we just accepted our 7th series of applications. And I think we all know the CBPR definitions that are out, and I think that many of us have probably struggled with our partnerships. And I know sometimes that partnerships can be really rough in trying to resolve those differences between academic and community members. And so for me, laying out those principles of decision making is so important. And how do we equitably involve both the academic and the community partner as they work together? And so our overarching goal is really to create the capacity or increase the capacity of those community academic partnerships to conduct research. And the real goal that we have is to improve the health of South Carolina and beyond. So we claim that we're one of the first initiatives in the U.S. to simultaneously train the community and academic members in community engaged research and to provide the pilot testing for implementation of that research. And I'm not sure that that's true, but we certainly like to claim that. And so what are our specific goals? We really want to incentivize and foster the community and academic partnerships and really want to advance community-based participatory research. And we want to work with the CES scholars to develop a 3- to 4-year plan for subsequent CBPR research, because oftentimes the pilot really just lays the initial groundwork particularly if the academic member has had no experience in community-based participatory research. It's kind of an immersion. And then the community member may not have participated in any sort of research. So we try to make that grant or that research plan something that can easily be accomplished. We started out with a logic model that we have changed over time, and our evaluation process, you may recognize, if you can see all the small print, as the re-aim process. We also are looking at other methods for evaluation. So what's the process that we use? We put out a call for applications that's disseminated through our community advisory board across communities, as well as across academic institutions in South Carolina. And we welcome comments and feedback and questions from both community and academic members. We provide an informational call where people can log on and together ask questions. Then we post that call for folks who are not able to do that so they don't miss out on questions and everyone has that same information. The application process are the bio sketches from the community and academic partner, and the community member may use a resume instead of the traditional NIH bio sketch, which can be a bit overwhelming to most community members. Then they describe their partnership and how that partnership will operate, as well as provide a research proposal and a budget up to $10,000. And $10,000 is just a little bit of money. We actually, for the PIs, do not spend the money for the PIs, but they may hire people from the community to help them collect the research, and we will provide training and consultation for that. And their supervisors sign a consent process or a consent form for them to participate, because we don't want them to get out in the community and then their supervisors say, well, this takes too much time. So we try to build that in so that there's little conflict there. And then there's a signed memorandum of understanding so that they document their understanding. That provides us a lot of insight into that partnership. And then our review is based on the NIH review process, and we add the partnership capacity to that review. And we also train our reviewers who have not done an NIH sort of review to help them understand that process, and then they're able to contribute their ideas back to how we can improve that. Once our scholars are selected, they have 12 weekly sessions that are about 90 minutes in length. And those weekly sessions are divided somewhat into presentation, but most are interactive. And then they have time to work on their research proposal. We also assign each team a mentor that sometimes they select, and sometimes we help them select based on their needs, and that mentor works with them throughout the process and the implementation of the research. They're given an opportunity based on their learning to improve and revise their application, and oftentimes it's making it more reasonable for them to really implement and to take the time that's needed to do the research. Once IRB approves the research, they have access to the funding, and then we also work with them on dissemination of the findings to the community. We have some community members who are really good at that, and work with them on applying for future funding. So here's just a schematic of how that's done. The real focus is on those sustainable community partnerships and really the co-ownership of the research and the didactic training that is more interactive, and the pilot grants with future funding. The curriculum content is based on the needs of the scholars. We spend a lot of time on something we call partnership readiness, because partners don't always know how to communicate, when is the best time to communicate, what are the ways that we're going to make decisions, etc. And then we look at the other topics and look at it from a community perspective as well as an academic perspective. And our speakers are a multidisciplinary team. I'd love to send all our community engaged scholars for an immersion project before they start. We have a toolkit that we use called Are We Ready? And that toolkit is free for download. And it's an evidence-based toolkit, and the goal is to foster that foundation for partnership. Because again, that's something that is a challenge. And so in that toolkit, we look at goodness of fit. What are the values of the community related to the research plan that they have in place? What's the compatible climate? Some of the academic folks can only go after work, after they do a full day of clinical, whereas the community folks may say, well, you know, I need to be home with my children in the evening. So we really look at how to create that compatible climate, the mutual benefit of each, what's the capacity for leadership and membership, because often the academic member is the one who wants to lead. So how do we create that mutual leadership and membership, as well as some basic competencies? And what are the resources from our CTSA and others to improve? And then how do we operate this research plan? Some of our community groups don't have an FWA. And so that becomes a challenge when you're looking at federal money. And some don't like the process of how they have to go through and create an FWA, as well as some of the other guidelines. And again, that conflict resolution and power sharing. So I'll quickly talk about some of our outcomes. As I said, we trained now 6 cohorts, and the 6th cohort is implementing their program of research. We have 23 teams, and about 50% are community members, and they represent over 24 different organizations across 8 cities, as well as urban, rural, and online communities. And they come from a variety of settings and professions. We've even had one who didn't have a high school degree, and she's probably one of our stars as far as research is concerned. And we've had others from the mayor's office. And we've had academic partners who come from 3 different institutions. In addition to MUSC, we've had Clemson and University of South Carolina partners, and they come from a variety of disciplines. Our studies have been multiple. We've had disability, spinal cord injury, dental health, cancer prevention, community reentry after release from prison, the online Alpha-1 community, physical activity for kidney transplant patients, mental health, dementia, childhood obesity, working with food banks, etc. So there's multiple different types of studies. When we look at the amount of money that we put into this program, both for staff and for grants, based really on 4 cohorts, we have a $46 return on investment for every dollar that we put in, as well as peer-reviewed publications, and others are on the way for cohort 5 and then 6. Of course, it's just implementing their work. And currently, our Community Engaged Scholars Program has served as a model for the Delaware Excel program. It's called ACE. And then in Louisiana with Xavier and others, they are implementing the training for community members and bringing some academic members in. And then I just learned while I was here that Howard University is getting ready to implement. We share materials. We're very open with sharing and working. We even provide the slides that our instructors have used. And we do this because our CTSA really supports cross-CTSA collaboration. And we've learned many, many lessons. Certainly conducting that learning needs assessment and adapting the curriculum to the needs of our team has been one. We've also learned that we can do online as well as asynchronous learning, but the partners truly need that face-to-face discussion of their partnerships, and there is no way really to do that unless they are face-to-face. You know, some have tried telephone once they start that process, but what we've learned with most of our communities in South Carolina is we need that eye contact. We need that face-to-face, sitting down at the table, because we learn a lot from that. And then we've also learned that we can integrate much of this curriculum into the community engaged or into the Masters in Clinical Research, which we've just finished our 2nd session, and we've actually had some of the faculty members apply for the Community Engaged Scholars Program. So we're excited about that. So what do we need? We truly, I think, as a group, need to look at models that work. How do we identify the models that work? What metrics do we use for evaluation? How can we collaboratively work together in looking at structure, process, and outcomes for community engagement, and particularly for community-based participatory research? Because our programs are different, our approaches are different, our communities are different, but I think there's some commonalities. And also, I think when we really reimburse communities and community members who participate in our research, it's a little bit more expensive with CBPAR than with traditional research. But I truly believe that the payoff is great, both for the research and for the training. And I really want to acknowledge my team who are here, Dana Burchell, who is our coordinator, and Dr. Michelle Nichols, who has recently joined our team, Michelle. And then we have a very, very supportive PI for our CTSA, Dr. Kathleen Brady, and many of you may know Kathleen. And then Perry Halushka, who looks sometimes and says, well, I don't know how to do that community-based stuff. That's different than what I do in the lab. But what we're really working to do is integrate this community engagement across all levels of research. And we just had a bench researcher come to one of our groups and say, how do I work with the community? What do I do? And so we had a group of people really brainstorm about how he might work effectively with the communities. So our CTSA is really working hard to make this happen. And additionally, we had some initial funding from the U.S. Army because they thought it was a great process. And so thank you, and I guess we'll take questions. So.
I'll go back to my job, which is supposed to be moderator. So we'll take some questions for a few minutes. If you could please go to the mic. What do we do now? That's my first question. I'm hoping you're going to be putting in a grant to test some of that boot camp. When will you be putting in that grant?
Yeah, we were actually just talking about that.
Okay, great. But we have some questions from the audience. I can ask who's going to be taking the boot camp this afternoon. But in terms, I did want to ask a follow-up question in regard to the partnerships. In terms of the success rate, how many go on to the second part where they get the next funds? It sounds like there's an initial kind of startup funding, and then how successful are the groups in terms of kind of what are the benchmarks to kind of getting to the next stage? That's for you.
Okay.
I guess do both of you have, it wasn't clear, are both of you have two components where you kind of have to do first part and then the second part, do you graduate or?
Well, so with our immersion training program, there's not a included component of going on to our partnership development grant program, but many do. I would say probably on the order of 80 to 90% of our participants have gone on to develop and successfully get funded through that partnership development pilot program.
And we've had about 50% who are successful with the federal grant process, and others who are successful with industry and other approaches. And most try. And so many are still working on that process. However, we've had a few who have dropped out along the way.
And do we know why? I mean, what are some of the barriers?
Some related to their academic appointment and changing assignments. And then we work to match the community partners with other researchers, and sometimes we do have the community partners who come to us and want to continue the work. So we really look to match those so we don't just walk away, or the community scholars are not left without an academic partner, and vice versa.
Thank you. We'll start with Ms. and then we'll go over here.
There's a line, and so I'm going to.
You're going to defer.
Turn to Alex.
You're going to defer to the line.
He's a community member.
Okay.
So Alex gets to go.
So as a community member, I appreciate all of the efforts that you're making in this direction, but I find myself beginning to feel like an exotic beast that everybody is. So I'm wondering if there are ways that in the academic world, the relationships can be transformed a little bit, because very often we're approached as if we are difficult to deal with and to talk with and so on. You know, we're not strange. What we'd like is an honest, equal dialogue. And I realize the money always presents a power dynamic that the community can't overcome. We do, I'll use a phrase that a friend of mine used, the commodification of misery. That in a sense, disease has become an economic part of the academic world. Grants have to be delivered, so that there's this whole discomfortable area that I would like to see, you know, maybe in a future conference, a really serious discussion of the economics and of the power dynamics between us. I think that would begin to open up and make us feel like not quite such strange creatures to be examined.
And Cheryl, may I comment on that? One of the things that we've been successful with a couple of communities is actually have them independently seek and obtain grants, and that's not even reported in our success rate. So I think yes, strange, but when you look at environmental health and a number of others, I think community members can be quite successful in non-research grants, but service grants. And we have them generating their own income as a group.
I might also, I love the comment. One of the things that we try to teach and model for folks that are in our training programs is that, you know, before you can get to the point of talking about research, and you know, you have to get to know each other as people. And so every meeting that we run in the community, we start with time. If you haven't met before as a group, 2 hours, 3 hours on just getting to know each other, so that you can connect and interact as human beings before you can start having the other conversations. And the community groups that I work with, I know about their kids, I know about their anniversaries, I know, and they know about mine. And so that helps, I think, to sort of bridge that gap, and then also talking about what are the different types of expertise that everybody's bringing, because everybody comes with incredibly important and valuable expertise, and understanding the importance of getting that surfaced and out on the table.
And gentleman has kindly deferred. Since we're in D.C., it's like we're in Congress. You deferred to the gentleman has kindly deferred to this side.
Thank you. One of the principles of CTSAs are bidirectional learning. And can you share how our academic partners gain knowledge and experience and expertise from your efforts?
Such easy question.
There is so much that I think our academic partners learn from working with community partners. And one of the things that we preach throughout, go into the community, learn from the community, and then we talk about some of that learning. Learn to go in and sit down and have a cup of coffee. Learn the environment. Learn to talk some of the language of the community so that the words are easily understood. And our community members are also encouraged to say to the academic members, you know, look, talk so we can understand. And so there's a lot of learning. Is it formalized? I'm not sure of a good way to formalize that learning, other than truly working together and getting to know your community, participating in the community activities, and truly being an outsider member of that community.
Do you have any comments on that, or should we?
Just real briefly, one of the things that I think our folks get is an understanding that you know, they're used to dealing with illness, disease from a very scientific level, that really distances themselves from, as scientists, from the emotional reality of what it means to live with a condition, what it means to hear the diagnosis of diabetes. We were with a group where one of our group members talked about when she heard that, it was like hearing a death sentence. And, you know, the whole room got quiet. And we talked about that. And we talked about how could we create messaging that not only would help clinicians understand that, but also to help patients understand that this is big. It's more than just words. It's more than just, oh, we're going to prescribe some medication. But they need to know that there are people that are there to walk that walk with them.
And I guess I'll just comment, probably one of the most powerful experiences that I've had is with an end-of-life project in the community where 240-something community members showed up for the kickoff, and more than that showed up for the final dinner, and we as the researchers didn't get up and present the information. The community members who were the leaders talked about what p-values mean. And I'm saying, gee, you know, I still struggle sometimes with my statistics. And that was exciting to hear that.
Thank you.
We'll take the final question comment.
Thank you for your talks this morning.
And could you speak into the mic a little bit? You're a little tall, so thank you.
Mickey Eater from Minnesota. Thank you for your talks. Carolyn, at the end you said we need metrics. We're going on 10 years now. I'm wondering if either of you could make some recommendations that we could collectively consider and work towards addressing some of the questions about the meaning that we derive from these experience of engagement.
And I certainly will share a list of those. I don't have them right in front of me, but Mickey, a list of those because I think we can generate quite a long list.
And perhaps that's something we can put in the proceedings as well. Do you have any other to share for the proceedings?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting there. We have one of our team who's here, Katie Nearings, developed a collective capacity building tool that's based on some previous work that we're now getting lots of information from. We're starting to share that with CTSAs, and I think by sharing these tools, I think we can help move that forward.
Well, thank you once again to our presenters. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, and it looks like we had one online, so we'll try and get that answered later. Sorry, you do not have a break, but you get to go to one of 5 very exciting learning labs this morning. So please choose one. They all look great, and you'll come back after the learning lab. We'll reconvene in here.